So my name is Jean Flamme. I've been an attorney for more than 40 years. I have been brought to this international criminal justice rather by chance, I would say. I always wanted to be a lawyer. I said to myself, I want to defend other people. It's as simple as that. It's a kind of mission, maybe. Some become priests, some become lawyers, and some become judges and prosecutors.
He committed some of the most serious crimes of concern for the international community. Crimes against children. They were 9, 11, 13 years old. They cannot forget the beating they suffer. They cannot forget the terror they felt and the terror they inflicted. They cannot forget the sounds of their machine guns.
Ituri was the bloodiest corner of Congo. During my time in Ituri, we documented the worst atrocities that one sees under international law, war crimes, crimes against humanity. So in particular, we were regularly documenting ethnic slaughter, massacre after massacre after massacre. And these weren't places where hundreds of people died. These were places where massacres were often well into their thousands. The two groups that were fighting most often were the UPC of Thomas Lubanga and the FNI and FRPI, of which Germaine Katanga was a senior member. The killings I documented there were gruesome, they were far-ranging, and they haunt me still to this day.
My name's David Hooper. I'm an English barrister, Queen's Counsel. At the International Criminal Court, I've just completed the trial of Germaine Katanga. He was charged with attacking a civilians. He was charged with murder as war crime or crime against humanity. He was charged with pillaging. He was charged with rape. He was charged with sexual slavery. I mean, Germaine Katanga's case has always been he was fighting a just war, and they attacked Bogoro because it was a military position, and that he had no intention that civilians would be killed. That wasn't his intention.
Well, last night we had a missile attack, so technically speaking we should all have been running for our bomb shelters, but here, you know, unfortunately people are pretty used to missile attacks. I think you'll find that it's part of kind of bizarre Israeli activity to actually not seek shelter when these missiles are hitting your city, but rather to go out and watch the Iron Dome defense system strike the missiles as they're coming in. My name is Nick Kaufman. I'm a lawyer. I've been practicing law here in Jerusalem, Israel, for the last 20 years. Most of my clientele are based in Jerusalem, but I have the odd case in The Hague. When you're dealing with these types of cases, people who, by and large, end up in The Hague are people who formerly had positions of power in their respective countries. And to get to a position of power, you have to be a special individual at any rate, have a certain amount of charisma. All the people that I meet in The Hague who I've dealt with have that charisma, that magnetic charisma.
Wilhelm Hermann Goering, guilty of conspiracy, crimes against peace, war crimes, and crimes against humanity. Death by hanging. Rudolf Hess, guilty of conspiracy and crimes against peace. Life imprisonment. Joachim von Ribbentrop, guilty of conspiracy, crimes against peace, war crimes, and crimes against humanity. Death by hanging. Wilhelm Keitel, guilty of conspiracy, crimes against peace, war crimes, and crimes against humanity. Death by hanging. Ernst Kaltenbrunner, guilty of war crimes and crimes against humanity.
This question always arises, how can you defend someone like that? There are as many truths as there are human beings. And the lawyer defends one of these truths and tries to explain to the judge how it could happen. This is what we have to do. If you can find an explanation, perhaps you can help to prevent it from happening again in the future, or you can, because people are waiting for justice, there is a hunger for justice.
Killing people, burning village, burning people, it's more than genocide. My name is Adam Bashar. Right now I am staying in Israel, originally from Darfur. I am here in Israel as a refugee. Before 2002, I lived with my family in a very peaceful area in Darfur, in North Darfur. And one day in the evening, some people are Janjaweed coming and attack my village with they're hiding with their horse and camels, and they have some cars. All the village is destroyed, all the people flee. There's a lot of people responsible, but the main target who is responsible for this is Umar Hassan Ahmed al-Bashir. He's the head of the Sudanese government today, and he's the head of the Janjaweed also. Everyone have a right to have a lawyer.
Even Omar Bashir?
Even Omar Bashir. I think he needs a lawyer in order to defend him.
Now, no matter what you thought of the man, and no matter how bad the man might have been, he still was entitled to a fair trial, and not a summary extrajudicial execution, which is what happened to him. Not just execution, but torture beforehand in the most obscene and horrific fashion. So what has the prosecutor of the International Criminal Court done about that? About the murder of a former head of state? So Aisha Gaddafi's quest was very simple. Please petition the prosecutor and ask her to investigate my father's murder. Her request was to see justice for what was done to her father. She is a victim. Her own father was murdered.
He's a victim too.
Yeah, absolutely. A victim of a war crime. It's not an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth in a democratic society. Maybe in other societies, but I don't think I'd want to live in that type of society.
If Muammar Gaddafi hadn't been killed, would you like to have represented him?
I'm not the sort of lawyer that goes chasing after clients. Clients come to me.
If he'd come to you, would you like to have represented him?
That's not a question, would I have liked to or would I not have liked to?
Would you have been willing to?
I would have been willing to, of course, if he'd wanted me to represent him, yes.
The first time I went down to see Andre Cooper, he was the first client I had in these kinds of courts, charged with genocide. And you're going down, you're in the plane going down to Tanzania for that first meeting, and you're thinking, goodness, I've got to shake hands with this. Could be like an Eichmann or 800,000 Tutsis killed. The barbarity of it all. And he's charged with the most awful crimes of cutting pregnant women open and removing their babies as a way of killing them. I mean, can you think of anything more ghastly than that? And I'm going to have to go down and shake hands with this man, you know. So I sort of rehearsed that a bit. And then I met him. And straight away I thought, well, that's a surprise. And as it turns out, I can say he didn't do those things. You mustn't rely on the prosecution to get it right. The only people who are going to investigate these cases actually properly, investigate the prosecution case properly and do the job, and to ensure that justice is done, that false witnesses don't get away with being false witnesses. The only people who are going to do this are defense lawyers. I wouldn't mind prosecuting a really guilty man charged with really nasty crimes at all. I'd quite enjoy that, you know. But that's not where my life has brought me. And fortunately, I've been representing men charged with dreadful crimes who in the main have been not guilty. And I've been able to show that.
I sat in a church in Bunia the day that Thomas Lubanga's trial opened, in front of a screen where the proceedings were being broadcast live. And the church was packed with hundreds of people. It was a church hall. And as Thomas Lubanga came on the screen and as the prosecutor read out in summary the case he had against Thomas Lubanga, you could have heard a pin drop in that church hall. For the first time, people were hearing what they had suffered, what had happened in their neighborhood, in their towns, in their homes, being described as war crimes and crimes against humanity. And that made a difference. The world was recognizing the horrors of what had happened to them.
I told Lubanga, look, Mr. Lubanga, don't forget you're a symbol here. You're the first accused ever before this court. So you're a symbol. And that's the problem of many of these accused people. They are picked out of many possible responsibles, and they are considered as the symbol of the evil of that part of the world. Are there so many innocent people in the prisons? I fear that's probably the case.
Jomo Katanga gets relatively regular visits from his family, about 2 or 3 times a year. And being in Holland, Dutch rules apply. So you can have conjugal relations with your wife, partner. And so he conceived a baby, or his wife conceived a baby as a result of these conjugal visits, called Carolina, and named after Caroline Boesman, who's my legal assistant and who's been, you know, a great asset in the case. Anyway, the net result of that has been that the baby was called Caroline, so that's rather sweet. I tried David, I tried Davinia, but that didn't work, so they preferred Caroline, which I think is just, actually. You know, he developed interests in the prison. He's now a very good cook, for example. He loves watching cookery programs, and he cooks for the other prisoners, who, let's face it, were, as President Taylor was in there with him, Aspirant Bemba, President Gbagbo of Cote d'Ivoire. So these are men who appreciated their cooking, and they rated him very highly.
You get to see and meet all these various characters, and I walked past one of the conference rooms and I saw a black guy sitting there with a kippah on his head, a kippah being a Jewish skull cap. And then the penny dropped and I realised that this was Charles Taylor, who had converted to Judaism apparently. So I'd read in the papers anyway, so I walked in and I introduced myself. Said, hi, I'm Nick Kaufman, I'm from Israel. Happy Hanukkah! And he said to me, I've heard all about you. Yes, happy Hanukkah to you as well. My rabbi's coming later to light candles with me. About 2 weeks later, I got a telephone call from my client, Barashimana. He said to me, listen, Nick, one of my colleagues, he was referring to President Taylor, has asked a favour. Could you get him something, I don't know if I'm going to pronounce this correctly, but it's called a mezuzah. Do you know what it is? And I said, of course I know what it is. I have one on my door. And it's on that door behind you as well. And I said, well, yes, I can get it for him if he wants. And so that's what I ended up doing. I mean, I don't know how it is explained to the United Nations detention facility what this item was and why it was being brought to Charles Taylor. But he was very grateful for it, so I'm being told. Well, there's a lot of talk about the Israeli government and the IDF being concerned about the ICC, and the Palestinians certainly use it as a sabre to rattle in front of the IDF. If the question is, do I think war crimes have been committed, is the IDF behaving in an illegal fashion, then you're not going to hear me criticise how the IDF conducts its warfare. I've been part of that system. I'm an officer in the IDF. I served as an officer in the IDF. I happen to know what ethics are inculcated in the soldiers and the officers. And the IDF, as far as I'm concerned, does make a conscious effort to abide by the laws of war. Of course, mistakes happen now and again, but then mistakes always happen. And to call a mistake a war crime, that can't be done until you actually have the evidence and until you're actually able to examine the facts and what happened.
Unless you address these situations fully and properly, they will haunt the future for 100 years or more.
Reconciliation needs justice. You can't have reconciliation without justice. I don't believe in that.
I don't think that this conflict, or for that matter any of the other conflicts in the situations being dealt with by the ICC, ever are motivated by the desire to achieve reconciliation. To date, and the Palestinian-Israel conflict will not be any different in my view, to date, all of these conflicts have come to the ICC as a result of political design, political machinations of one form or another.
Do you think you can have peace without justice?
You can have peace without justice. And we've had peace with Egypt and Jordan here in the Israeli scenario for quite a few years now. And there have been no, shall we say, international justice mechanisms set up to get retribution or to have the victim's voice heard.
Courts and justice are really the finer workings of this concept of a rule of law. But take it away and anarchy comes. And with anarchy comes all those psychopaths. You know, he was the baker last week, he was the teacher, and these are the people that we see emerge in these conflicts, taking control, ruining the lives of decent people. again and again. So there we are. I think justice is giving effect and support to the rule of law.
Justice isn't about vengeance, justice is about truth. It's as simple as that. There's nothing more to say.
When you come to the conclusion that someone is not guilty, you have to acquit him or her. That is justice.